Hello and welcome to Diabetes Connections in the News. I'm Stacey Sims, and every other Friday I bring you a short episode with the top diabetes stories and headlines happening now. Our top story this week, in a first for any automated insulin delivery system, the FDA clears Omnipod 5 for people with type 2. The new indication is based on data from the real-world multi-center secure T1D trial. This was a racially diverse group of more than 300 adults with type 2 who were taking insulin. About half were also taking a GLP-1 receptor agonist. Use of Omnipod 5 resulted in a significant A1C reduction from 8.2 at baseline to 7.4 at 13 weeks. No difference in outcome by GLP-1 use. Some doctors are already prescribing the Omnipod 5 off-label to some of their patients with type 2. This new indication is likely to increase uptake of Omnipod 5 into primary care, and that is where the vast majority of people with type 2 diabetes are managed. For the first time, you can get a CGM over the counter now, no prescription. Dexcom began selling Stelo this week, intended for people with type 2 who do not take insulin, although it can be used by people without diabetes. It costs $99 for a one-time order of 2 sensors or $89 for a monthly prescription of the same. Stelo is a 15-day sensor based on Dexcom's other glucose monitors. Main difference is in the software. In the app, Stelo does not have as many alerts and alarms as the G6 or G7. It does flag glucose spikes, provides information about time and range goals, and includes meal and activity logging. The intent here is to show a user how food and exercise and sleep can affect your glucose levels. Abbott plans to launch 2 over-the-counter CGMs very soon, one called Lingo for people without diabetes and one called Rio for people with diabetes who don't use insulin. It has not yet revealed the price for either sensor, nor has it revealed the different features, what makes Lingo different from Rio. A lot more to come here. You will soon be able to get vials of Lilly's popular weight loss drug Zepbound from a direct-to-consumer website at a lower cost. Now, this is still $400 a month for the lowest dose, $550 for the next lowest. And again, it's vials, not pens. Lilly and Novo have been struggling to make enough of their obesity medications to meet soaring demand. It really seems to be about keeping up with the pen supply. Lilly's medicines are now listed as available by the FDA, although they are not yet off the official shortage list. They've been there most of the year. Now, I haven't seen this mentioned in any of the reporting, but if it's coming in a vial, you need to use a separate syringe to inject. Not much of a barrier to this group listening, probably. But pens have made using drugs like this much easier for a lot of people. And I worry that going back to syringes is better for the companies and the patients. It saves a lot of money for them. And remember, Zepbound is tirzepatide. That's the same medication as Mounjaro. This is just a question of different dosing. Mounjaro is approved for people with type 2 diabetes, so this Zepbound in the vial could be a way for some people to better access Mounjaro, even as it is very hard to come by. In a few months, the U.S. government will announce the list of 15 more drugs they will negotiate Medicare pricing for, and Ozempic is a top candidate. Now, this is speculation from Wall Street analysts, but I think it is worth watching. All of the drugs on their prediction list have been on the market since at least 2017 and are among those that Medicare spends the most on. Under President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, prices for 10 highly popular prescription drugs used by Medicare will be cut by a significant margin in 2026. We're talking 38% for some, 79% for others. The industry has fought the negotiation program, saying it will stifle innovation. Government researchers predict that the use of Ozempic will raise the U.S. deficit over the next 10 years. At its current price, Medicare spent over $4.6 billion on Ozempic in 2022. Type 2 diabetes and prediabetes are associated with brain aging, according to a new Swedish study. Good news, though, it may be counteracted by a more healthy lifestyle. This was a very large study, 31,000 people between the ages of 40 and 70 years of age who had had a brain MRI scan. And then they used machine learning to estimate brain age in relation to the person's chronological age. Prediabetes and diabetes were associated with brains that were half a year and 2.3 years older than chronological age, respectively. In people with poorly managed diabetes, the brain appeared more than 4 years older than chronological age, but the association was less among people with high physical activity who didn't smoke and did not have heavy alcohol consumption. Another study showing the link between bright light at night and a higher risk of developing type 2, this study in the journal Lancet. This was another big study, 85,000 people and about 13 million hours of light sensor data. Now, these are people who did not have type 2. They wore devices on their wrists for a week to track light levels throughout the day and night. Then they were tracked over the following 9 years to see whether they went on to develop type 2. Having more exposure to light between 12:30 a.m. and 6 a.m. was linked to a higher risk of developing type 2, and this was true regardless of how much light people were exposed to during the day. They say they also accounted for other factors like lifestyle, sleep patterns, shift work, diet, and mental health. Right back to the news in just a minute, but first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Edgepark. Take control of your diabetes with a broad range of diabetes management supplies from Edgepark. The latest diabetes supplies and continuous glucose monitors from top brands simplify blood sugar management. Edgepark accepts most insurance plans, and Medicare and Medicare Advantage cover certain devices. Plus, Edgepark takes care of the insurance paperwork to make ordering as seamless as possible. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Edgepark logo to learn more about Edgepark's diabetes supplies and CGM devices. Back to the news now. And is there a link between voice pitch and glucose levels? And is it strong enough to one day perhaps lead to non-invasive glucose monitoring? Click Labs has published a new study in Scientific Reports. They say the link is confirmed. People in this study were fitted with CGMs, and then their voice was recorded multiple times a day for 2 weeks. The analysis revealed a linear relationship where an increase in CGM glucose levels corresponded to an increase in the fundamental frequency in the voice. The lead author says, quote, whereas current glucose monitoring methods are often invasive and inconvenient, a voice-based glucose monitoring could be as easy as talking into a smartphone. Click Labs was also responsible for a study we talked about last year that demonstrated voice and AI can screen for type 2 diabetes with high accuracy. And earlier this year, we talked to the teenager behind a free bolus calculator. The FDA took T1D down when they and Apple started cracking down on health tools that didn't have regulatory approval. So that teenager, Drew Mendelow, has been working to bring it back, and we have an update. He says, over the last 2 years, we have been tirelessly working to complete our FDA pre-market submission. Thanks to contributions by the T1D community, we were able to complete the preparations needed for the human factors study. The trial itself is the last vital piece needed before we can submit the app to the FDA. And we are thrilled to announce that the team at Dexcom has graciously offered to run the study for us. This is a really big deal. Kudos to Dexcom and to Drew, and we will let you know when T1D is back in the App Store. That's it for In the News. Hey, before I let you go, if you have never given us a rating or review, why don't you take a minute to do that if you like what you hear? If you don't, it's okay if you skip it. But if you like what you hear, I'd love for you to head on over to wherever you listen. Leave us a rating, leave us a review, let other people know how to find this show. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.